Hello, and in this video I'll be showing you how to design a project timeline using Google Sheet. So the first thing you need is to create a sheet for your project timeline, and you can do that by going onto Google Sheet. Suppose I have Google Sheet here. You go on there and then you click on where it says the sheet, which will be there. So once you click on that, you come up to your Google Sheet and then you create a new one. And once you do that, you give it your title, which will be project timeline. Now the next thing that you have to do is to start creating your timeline by including the content, and then you fix the design, and then you can schedule your time for each of these activity. For this particular demo, we're going to be designing a project timeline for a student research project. Suppose you've been asked to produce a project timeline to show the beginning and end of your project, that is how you're going to conduct the project, talking about the first things that you will do and then what comes up next until you complete the project. So here I'm going to give it a title, say item. I'll start from A1, always start from A1, item, and then I'm going to give it my item. Before you start inputting your item here, it will be very good if you write them down on a piece of paper. That's roughly what you want to cover within that particular project. So now I've written mine on a piece of paper, so I actually know what are the activities I have to do to complete this particular project. So I'm going to just write them down. I'm going to write, first thing I have to do is to formulate a research topic, and then I would conduct my initial literature search. This is to get an idea of the topic and the discussion around the topic. Then the next thing that I would do, let me increase this a little bit to 100. The next thing that I would do is I will conduct my critical literature review. Critical literature review is the systematic process of reviewing existing literature in your subject area so that you can get a profound and an in-depth understanding of that particular subject. And you can do that by using a framework. Now, the next thing that I'll do is to construct aim and objective. Aim and objective. Research project should have an aim and objectives. The difference between an aim and objective is that aim is the outcome, and objectives are the processes that will lead to the outcome. Sometimes we can also say that the aim is the result and the objectives are the steps to achieving that result. Then the next thing that I will do is to produce a research question. Now, don't make the mistake that other students would normally do. That will be to have numerous research questions that could actually be you shooting yourself in the leg. It's advisable that you have one research question, which will be the underlining framework for your entire project. The research question is the inquiry to the research. It shows the scope of the work, what you are guided, what your research is guided by, and why would you have numerous research questions for a short project. I'm not saying that you should always have one research question. Of course, you can have 2 research questions or 3 research questions, but you should be very mindful of your research scope so that you don't go beyond, or you don't actually limit or constrain your research. So normally I would say, depending on the type of research and the expectation of the research, it's very advisable that you have a clear research question, one or two maximum. So the next thing that I will be doing for this project is I would be reading up about research philosophy. So research philosophy or research paradigm is a logic that guides your research. It could be critical realism, subjectivism, and so on and so forth. But you have to do an independent research to learn about research philosophy, to know exactly what paradigm route that you're going to be engaging for your research. But I would also like to mention that your research philosophy should be guided by the type of your research. And remember, we have quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods. So it's important that you really understand what type of research you want to conduct, as that would help you to narrow down the research philosophy or the research paradigm that is fitted for your research. After I know my research philosophy, the next thing that I would do is to do my research design and my strategy. So sometimes you could say research design, and sometimes you could say research strategy, but also many times you could say research design and strategy. And it is really, really very important that you understand your research design. So research design is basically how you're going to conduct your research in terms of the data collection and data analysis. The research strategy is the method that you're going to actually adopt or employ to collect the data and analyze the data. Then the next thing that I would do is research sampling. There's a difference between sample, population, and sample. So population is the general participant who are equally eligible to for you to engage in your research, whereas sample is a subset of your population. And I'll give you an example. Suppose you want to conduct a research about the impact on COVID-19 on student learning, university and college and university student learning in a particular area, say in Nigeria. You'll be dealing with such a voluminous amount of data. There might be 21 million students. These 21 million university students called population, but it's unfeasible to actually engage them, especially for your student research, due to the limitation of time, data collection strategy, and so on and so forth. So instead, you're going to conduct a research with a subset of the population, say like maybe 500 population, or narrow down to 50 population, but you have to still justify why you have actually engaged with the number that you have, and if there are systems that can help you to justify your sample. So sample is a subset of the population, and it's very advised that you understand this. So I need to create a time on my project timeline to know exactly what research sampling is, and come up with my research sample for my project. Then the next thing I'm going to do is to conduct my ethical consideration. Now, ethical consideration is very important because it gives you permission to conduct a research, having checked that your research does not pose any threat or harm to the subject or participants, and your research have an identifiable contribution to the general body of knowledge or general body of academic knowledge. When you are doing your research proposal, this is where you need to show your project timeline. So that is why you're saying here that you're going to be conducting your ethical consideration after you have, formulated your topic, conduct a literature review, produce a research question, understand your philosophy, so that when you present your proposal, you can support, or when you apply for your ethics approval, you can support beyond all reasonable doubt why your research is feasible and why it should get clearance from the ethics committee. Then the next thing that I will do is now to draft my research proposal. Like I said, you have to submit a research proposal before you actually engage with your research. Do not make the mistake of conducting your research without getting your proposal approved, because that could really cost you so many. It could create a lot of mess and cost you a lot of troubles. Sometimes you may have to start all over again, and that would cost you time, resources, energy, money, and so on and so forth. So it's important that you submit your research proposal to say to your supervisor or your tutor that this is what I'm proposing for my research, this is the topic I'm proposing, and this is why, because literature shows this and that, and this is my aim and objective. And also my research project is going to be guided by my question, but nevertheless, this is the philosophical paradigm that will support my research. This is the logic behind my research. This is the design, research design and strategy. So your proposal at this point can really get approved if you have ticked all the boxes. And that way you can also say that this is the ethical perspective to this research. These are the possible limitations of the research, but these are the strategies that I would employ to mitigate these limitations and ensure that my project is successful. And then you submit your research proposal. So when you submit your research proposal, if you have done all the items in number 2 to number 10, it's more likely that you're going to get approved. Don't forget to always proofread your work before you submit the work. That's why I've written down here, draft your research proposal. This is where you're going to complete a research proposal, take it for proofreading, give it to friends to read through it, make some necessary corrections. You can also engage in other professional services just to make sure that your research proposal is in check, and then you submit the research proposal. But then you're also saying that you're going to work based on the feedback from your lecturers. So I'm going to say feedback review. This is where you receive a feedback from your supervisor saying that your research proposal has been approved and you can continue with the research. And then you begin to design your research question. Remember, you only design your research questionnaire if it's a quantitative method, but if it's a qualitative method, then you would have to design your research questions. Because the difference between quantitative and qualitative are very clear. Qualitative deals with text because it shows, it helps to produce patterns and themes. Quantitative deals with number, statistics, because it helps to produce relationship and strength of the relationship. That's correlation and regression. Then the next thing that you have to do is to do your pilot study. Pilot study is an activity that allows you as a student or researcher to test your project questionnaire with a certain number of people. That way you can strengthen the credibility of your research, to say that I gave my questions to participants from the subject area and my supervisor or my proofreader, and that led to some minor corrections in terms of this, in terms of that. And other than that, the result or the outcome of the pilot study shows that my project questionnaire is feasible, and it also reinforces the significance of the project. Then after you have done your pilot study and you already finalized that your questionnaire is good to go, or your question, you will then go out to collect the data. Now remember, if it's quantitative data, you're going to engage with survey, and there are survey softwares like JISK, and you also have SurveyMonkey, which is very, very popular. But I should mention here that if you're watching this video and you're studying in the UK, there is something called GDPR, which is the Data Protection Act, and there's a part of it that suggests or that indicates that students must engage with softwares to collect data within the UK. So SurveyMonkey, as you may know, is an American-based software system, so you need to check their policy, the GDPR policy, before you can use that. Another thing is universities now have universities now have access to universities now have access to survey survey softwares, and they give you student access. So make sure you check with your university. Otherwise, you just need to confirm that you can use SurveyMonkey. Nowadays, people also use Google Forms as well, but you just need to be sure that it is allowed in your institution. Then the next thing that you have to do is to write up your project. You can say project drafting, or you can say project write up. then you begin to discuss. You can say you discuss your findings, discussion and findings, and you then write up your conclusion and your recommendation, and of course your future work as well, and then write up the future work. Future work is the extension of your project, and then you submit project. So what I have shown here is the A to Z of conducting my project, and I'm going to be telling my supervisor or my tutor that this is exactly what I'm going to be doing, and these are the times I'm going to do it. So when are the times that you're going to do? How do you now design that? Well, it's important for me to state that every project have its timeline. Some projects are 6 months, 3 months, a year. So you just have to really be very sure about the project timeline. But for this particular demo, our project timeline would be between December and between September and December. So it's a little over 3 months. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to write my September, and I'm going to write my October, and I'm going to write my November, I'm going to write my December. But each of these month they have 4 weeks, so I'm going to create I'm going to make sure I have 4 columns like this. I will then come here, I would merge this up. I will say merge, and I will say center, and I will do the same thing for October. I'm going to add columns so that there are 4 columns for each month, indicating 4 weeks. Now I'm going to do them in such a way that they look like the columns are marginalized to a sizable cells, and this is for the October, and this is for the October, and this is for the October as well, and the October. Then I will do that of November, and again I'm going to highlight that area, merge, and I'll put it in center, and I'll make sure that they are sizable columns. So I'm just using my hand to do that, just because I don't want the mouse click sound, which is quite yeah, uncomfortable when you're watching the video. So these are my months. So given that I don't need the remaining of these months, I'm just going to highlight everything, and I'm just going to delete. So now I'm going to add my weeks. I'm going to add a row beneath that. I'm going to add number 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's for September. 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 weeks. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4. And here I'm going to also make it a little bit sizable. So that's my week. I'm going to bold them up as well. I would bold this. I'm going to write here weeks. Now I'm going to make sure, because these are overlapping on the next column, I'm going to double click on that so they are all in the size. I see that B is not necessary. I'm going to delete that. So that is now. So you have your items and you have your week. And then now I'm just going to also make sure that my project So I just want to make sure that they're all in a sizable page. Then I'm going to copy to Control A, and I'm going to make sure it's the same font and it's 12. I'll double click that so they all fit into that. And I think I'm going to reduce that so you can see that in a, yeah. So now that I have done that, I will then start filling in my project to indicate the time frame. So for the project topic, I'm going to be doing that in September. That's the first week. I'm going to be using green, so I'm going to do it for like a week. And again, for my literature, I'm going to start my literature after I have conducted my project. Suppose I have done that already, because right now I'm at this point. So I'm at this point of submitting my research proposal. So I've literally done all of these parts. So my literature review, I have started also at the same time in September, and I'm going to be doing that up onto the 3rd week. And for my aims and objective, I'm going to be doing that in the 3rd week at the same time. I'm going to also produce my research question in September, but in week 4. And I'll conduct my research philosophy I'm going to start in September, week 4, and I'm going to also read it because you need some time for that to understand that very well. So I'm going to do that for 2 weeks. I did that for 2 weeks. Then my research design and strategy, I would like to do that just as I'm finishing my philosophy. So I'm going to do that for 2 weeks. Or should I say, yeah, I think 2 weeks. My research sampling, I'm going to do that at the end of my October. Then my ethics consideration, I would just conduct some research about that. I would draft my project as I'm doing my ethics. I'll draft my project as I'm doing my ethics. Then I'm about submitting my project. So, but I'm going to put, okay, the ethics. Yes, I've done the ethics, but I still need to review it. So I'm going to put it as Amber. Then I'll draft my research proposal, and I've submitted my research proposal in October, the last week of October. Now I'm waiting for the feedback from my tutor. So the feedback, I should receive it the 1st week of November. So I'm going to use red because that hasn't been completed. Then after that, I will start with my questionnaire for 2 weeks in November. I will do my pilot study at the same time in November. I will collect my data over 2 weeks in November 3rd week and November 4th week. I would analyze my data in December over 2 weeks. And at the same time, I'm going to be drafting my project. So I'm going to be doing that at the same time as I am analyzing my data, part of the draft. And I'll be doing that over 3 weeks. Then at the same time, I will be doing my final write-up over the same time. So I'm going to be doing this concurrently. Then I will be doing my conclusion and recommendation in week 4 of December, and my write-up project in week 4 of December, and I'll be submitting my project in that same week. Remember, because you need to proofread your work, so if you're going to have a space for proofreading, it might be very good for you to add it as an item here, and then add, when you're going to be proofreading the work. Sometimes you need to make changes. You can see that you're doing a lot in the last week. So in the submission week, you're submitting the project, you're writing up your future work, and your conclusion and recommendation. So you're doing the 3 things in the same week. So you need to check how feasible that is. But it's very good that you indicated that from the moment you're analyzing your data, you start drafting your findings and discussions. So that is really very good. And it's also very, very clear. But sometimes, suppose you're given a specific date to submit the work. Say you were asked to submit the work in January. say the 3rd week of January. So suppose you've been asked to submit the work in the 3rd week of January. So what I would say is, obviously, I would submit the work in the last week of January, no doubt about it, but I would spread out the time for my writing. Say my future work, I'm going to write it the same week that I'm submitting, because it's just future work. You're just going to read it. So I'm just going to write, proofread. I'm going to do the proofreading in the weeks before. Yeah, I'm going to take that off. Then I'm going to be doing my write-up and future work in 1 week. I don't need 2 weeks for that. I'm also going to do my conclusion and recommendation over there. Yeah, so that kind of makes sense now. Then all you have to do is just to, take a screenshot of this, or you upload it as a picture. You can copy it and paste it as a picture on your proposal, and then you can submit your work. So I hope this helps you to design your project timeline. Don't forget that you can design your project timeline for student research, mini project, major projects, your assignment, or this could be a good practice for you when before the run-up of your assessment or exam, to kind of give yourself a good a picture of how you would conduct your independent study, so you increase your chances of success. This video is brought to you by Aspire Student Talk. Please leave your comment below and tell me if you have any question, or if you have any particular topic concerning research that you would like me to answer. That happens to be one of my area of strength, and I'll be happy to answer your question. Until next video, take care, and don't forget, you matter. Bye.